Story 1 of 4. FAR by-election tests One Nation and Independence against coalition in Australia. FAR by-election tests One Nation and Independence against coalition in Australia. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The FAR by-election is scheduled for May 9, 2026, triggered by Susan Lay's resignation as MP after losing the Liberal leadership in February 2026. FAR is a large electorate covering 126,563 square kilometres, 16% of NSW, including Albury, Griffith, Deniliquin, Leeton, and border towns along the Murray River. The frontrunners in the by-election are One Nation's David Farley and Independent Michelle Milthorpe, with the Liberal, Risa Butkowski, and Nationals, Brad Robertson, trailing. The Liberal and Nationals parties are preferencing One Nation ahead of Milthorpe on their how-to-vote cards, which could help Farley win the seat. Michelle Milthorpe is backed by the Voices for FAR Group and Climate 200, but rejects being labelled a teal independent. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports One Nation's support has fallen slightly in recent polls, while the ABC notes One Nation remains a frontrunner with Farley leading in internal polling. The ABC states Milthorpe secured 20% of first preference votes in the 2025 federal election, but The Guardian does not explicitly confirm this exact figure. The Guardian describes Milthorpe as tipped to eclipse the coalition's two candidates, while the ABC frames her as neck and neck with Farley but trailing in preference flows. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 2 of 4. One Nation wins FAR by-election, ending coalition's 77-year hold. One Nation wins FAR by-election, ending coalition's 77-year hold. Here's what every outlet agrees on. David Farley won the FAR by-election for One Nation on May 9, 2026, securing around 41% of the primary vote. Michelle Milthorpe, the independent candidate, received around 28% of the primary vote in the FAR by-election. The Liberal candidate Risa Butkowski and the Nationals candidate Brad Robertson each received just over 9% of the primary vote in the FAR by-election. The FAR electorate covers 126,563 square kilometres, or nearly 16% of New South Wales. Pauline Hanson thanked voters for delivering a victory, stating they saw One Nation as the last hope of changing things in this country. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report Farley received 41% of the primary vote, but the exact percentage varies slightly in different sources. The Guardian and Newscomau mention Farley's past Labour donations and membership, but Newscomau emphasises this as a loyalty issue for One Nation, while The Guardian frames it as part of Farley's political journey. The Guardian describes Farley as hesitant to resort to hateful rhetoric on immigration, while Newscomau does not address this nuance, focusing instead on his past affiliations. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 3 of 4. Traveller complaints about Qantas, airlines, passports, and travel experiences in Australia. Traveller complaints about Qantas, airlines, passports, and travel experiences in Australia. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jeff Lindsay from Thurgoona, NSW, experienced issues linking Qantas Platinum credit card lounge invitations to Sydney International Terminal, refurbishment, Dallas, and Los Angeles, with rejections despite payment of fees. Paul Everingham from Pejon Beach, Queensland, lost Turkish Airlines tickets, Singapore to Athens, after missing an outbound flight due to his wife's hospitalization, with Turkish Airlines forfeiting the return tickets despite the Gulf crisis. Jan Norton from Wahroonga, NSW, advises travelers to Vietnam to print a paper copy of their e-visa and scrutinize every detail to avoid issues at check-in. Jenna Riddle from Leachheart, NSW, faced issues with Aunt Betty, Flight Centre, refusing to add a baby to her flight booking after birth, requiring direct contact with Singapore Airlines for resolution. Barry Hampton from Forest Glen, Queensland, reported a fraudulent charge at Santiago Airport but avoided loss by paying cash, noting the car license plate, and reporting the incident to police, which helped recover funds. But not all outlets told the same story. Both sources are identical. No contradictions exist between SMH and Thej. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 4 of 4. Putin scaled back Victory Day parade amid Ukraine war tensions and ceasefire talks. Putin scaled back Victory Day parade amid Ukraine war tensions and ceasefire talks. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Vladimir Putin delivered a speech during Victory Day celebrations in Red Square on May 9, 2026, promising victory in the war in Ukraine, which he calls a special military operation. This year's Victory Day parade was scaled back, with no tanks or military equipment rolling over Red Square. Instead, weapons like the Yars ICBM, Arkhangelsk nuclear submarine, Peresvet laser weapon, Su-57 fighter, S-500 missile system, and drones were shown on giant screens. North Korean troops marched in the parade, having fought alongside Russian forces in Ukraine's Kursk region. A 3-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, announced by US President Donald Trump, was agreed upon and began on May 11, 2026, with no breaches reported since. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a decree allowing Russia's Victory Day parade to proceed, stating Ukrainian weapons would not target Red Square. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states that the ceasefire was supported by the Kremlin and Kiev, while The Guardian does not explicitly mention Kremlin's support for the ceasefire beyond its agreement. ABC mentions that the parade lasted with soldiers marching and cheering, while The Guardian states the parade lasted about 45 minutes, roughly half the length of previous years, without emphasizing the crowd's reaction. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian.